Hello and welcome to episode 109 of Driver's Seat Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. Well, last weekend was a weekend to forget. Between TV issues, bank issues, canceled technician appointments, a pair of broken glasses, as well as general frustration, I was so much more burned out on Monday than I was after not working since Friday. With that, I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions on the Daytona 500. I'm just going to read my notes as they were written. I think the daytime move was a good move, but I think the Xfinity Series at night was a better idea because a primetime race on a post would have been a better move with a bigger audience. Granted, this was on President's Day, but still primetime is better. Now, I know that the new Fox graphic that they just debuted this year, it's unique. It's basically showing what car to look at during a replay. It does look odd, but I do get it. I'm not going to get used to the new Ford Mustang anytime soon. The Ford template looks really, really odd. Trying to jot down these notes with a cat sitting on you is very difficult, if not impossible. I do love her and I can't be mad at her though. I think that the Fox under the helmet should only be done under caution, not while the race is actually green. And speaking of which, picture-in-picture commercial breaks are just dumb. Just ask AEW and Domino's Pizza how well that worked out for them. The He Gets Us Feet commercial, which also aired on the Super Bowl, might be one of the dumbest pieces of advertising I've ever seen. And think of the ground that covers, and we'll discuss some more advertising a little later on. Stage breaks are still dumb. Most fans agree with me. And I'm sorry, but if you're a race team and you post memes on your social media during a race, I'm not going to take you seriously. Now, the Fox Crank It Up, which I do normally like, it works during actual racing, not during pit stops. So given how few people gave a shit last year, it's kind of amazing to me that the NASCAR Powerball Playoff is returning. I really couldn't give less of a shit. I had a random thought, because they were discussing the twin 125s. Is there any reason that NASCAR just couldn't have all the cars that show up to compete at the Daytona 500? It really wouldn't hurt anybody, and it could be beneficial for all involved. So of course NASCAR isn't going to do it. The logos on the front of the front row motorsports cars, especially on the 38, gave off an old Chevy SS5, which is weird because they're running Fords. I think that for all the time and effort it takes to develop and set up the gyrocam, Fox doesn't use the gyrocam nearly enough. And watching the commercials, I was also thinking, are teams getting permission to use drivers and cars in commercials, or are companies getting more permission to use drivers and cars in commercials? Or, I'm going to ask this question, knowing what the answer is NASCAR loosening the reins on promotion restriction? Probably the earlier one. NASCAR pushing the Chicago street races during the second stage tells you how badly they want this to succeed. We get it, Fox. Kevin Harvick has a new podcast. We all have podcasts. You don't need to remind us that he has one every other commercial break. I will give Fox credit. Showing the sunset around lap 108 was admittedly awesome. Speaking of stupid advertising, the Samsung Galaxy S4 go-kart commercial at Texas Motor Speedway was just as stupid as the He Gets Us commercial. Answer me this question. Why would this make me want to buy a Galaxy S24? Hello? Anyone? Bueller? Moving on. Kyle Busch recovered from the pit stop mistake where his lug nut didn't get attached. And the fact that he recovered well and as quickly as he did is amazing, to say the least. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and most of the fans agree with me. Pack racing is fun. I'm getting tired of the Busch Guide commercials. As much as I love to drink Busch beer, I can't stand their commercials. And I'm also kind of stunned that the Busch Guide hasn't been made into a book or even a joke book yet. There was a rather lengthy commercial with Fox and Wendy's and DJ Khaled and Jamie Little and mini golf. Why? What did this accomplish? And again, why would this make me want to eat at Wendy's? That's the thing about commercials. It's supposed to get you to want to consume the product. Going out of your way not to convince me going out of your way not even to mention your product is kind of astounding in a commercial. Green flag pit stops are never not worth watching. That stack up at lap 185. How was that not a wreck? Bubba Wallace had to pit late in the race because his crew didn't get enough fuel in the car. And if he chooses to scream and curse and yell at his pit crew, I wouldn't blame him. I would too, and I understand completely. With the big one towards the end of the race, number one, pack racing with 10 laps to go. The big one is imminent. That's just a law of the land. Came with eight to go, and it looked almost to me like the entire field was caught up at the end of the race. Now, you know how Fox has the list of cars and how they came out of pit lane at the end of pit stops? Well, this failed at the last round of pit stops. And the race ends with a wreck. William Byron and the 24 goes to victory lane. I did enjoy the race. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I also take pride that I spelled every word in my notes for this segment correctly. With that, the Daytona 500 is over. Atlanta is up next week. I will take my first break and I'll talk some non-major promotion wrestling news. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now some wrestling news, because I didn't see these stories until recently because, well, I don't live my life on wrestling internet. I also don't live my life on racing internet. I have a very balanced life, which is a good thing. But the first story features our old friend Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle loves drugs and lacks any kind of self-awareness. As I discussed when it originally broke, after the WWE Endeavor merger, Riddle was let go. Between failed drug tests and numerous controversies, this firing came as a shock to nobody except Matt Riddle. Well, Matt Riddle has signed for New Japan and has wrestled a number of matches, and he was recently interviewed and had to say this about a WWE release. Quote, "I think that definitely didn't help things. Me and Dana White, we don't have the greatest relationship, but I know he's definitely a big part of that. It definitely played a big part. Also, I know they're making budget cuts regardless, and I was getting paid quite a pretty penny. I think it was a big contributing factor. I was going to get paid $1 million starting next year, but I also think, that the merger didn't help, and that also my behavior didn't help either. I ruffled some feathers in HR within the last couple of months I was there. I asked a couple of questions, this, that, plus other things, so I think there's multiple reasons why they got rid of me. No, Matt, there's only one reason you were gotten rid of, because you were a train wreck in the UFC, which is why you got released, because you failed numerous drug tests. You were a train wreck in WWE, failing numerous drug tests and numerous out-of-ring controversies. Do you honestly think he's not going to be a train wreck in New Japan? Dana White didn't need to have a reason to fire Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle gave him all the reasons he needed. Okay? Matt Riddle has dug his own grave numerous times. He has no self-awareness. It's also clear, having dealt with addiction and my own personal issues, he is very much in denial about his problems. I was in denial for many years. I get it. But unlike Riddle, I don't have kids with 2 different women and an ex-wife and alimony. I am not a parent. But when you have kids, it stops being about you and it starts being about them. Riddle clearly is not mature enough to have one child, let alone 4. He's got numerous drug issues. He's clearly in denial about his problems. He's not in a good space right now, and he has no one to blame but himself. And I don't want anyone else to say, well, you know, he's got his... everyone has problems. You should be sympathetic. No. Yeah, I do have my own problems, but I don't have 4 kids. Okay, he's got to do what's best for his kids at some point, because clearly what he's doing isn't good enough. Well, we're going to stick with New Japan because I missed this when it first happened, but it's a great move. I think it was late last year or earlier this year, New Japan released a statement about fans approaching wrestlers outside of events. I'm going to read this as it was written. Quote, regarding contact with wrestlers outside of events, thank you for supporting New Japan Pro Wrestling. On principle, we ask fans to refrain from contact with NJPW wrestlers outside officially designated fan meeting events. This includes waiting for wrestlers on entrance and exits from venues. Please bear in mind that around venues and hotels where wrestlers are staying, waiting for wrestlers and pushing for autographs and pictures puts a strain on personal time as well as it disrupts regular business for other guests and stuff. Please understand that in the future, actions deemed to be overly aggressive or to be construed as stalking will be discussed with local law enforcement and dealt with appropriately. We kindly ask fans to refrain from the following: waiting at dojos, venues, hotels, places of transport, at airports, etc., for wrestlers as well as photography and any video taken without consent. Approaching wrestlers and requesting photographs and autographs outside of designated meet and greet events. Directly bringing gifts and fan mail to wrestlers. Gathering in large numbers around venues for wrestlers. New Japan and its wrestlers deeply appreciate the support for our great fans, and we ask for your cooperation in respecting personal space as well as local residents and institutions. Well, I'm a wrestling fan. And as a wrestling fan, it's very hard to be a wrestling fan sometimes because of the way other fans act. I can also say that being on Twitter, I can say that everything New Japan has banned fans from doing, North American fans do on a regular basis. To quote House of Wrestling, where I got this article, link in the description, quote, aggressive fans approaching pro wrestlers for autographs at airports or elsewhere has become a major problem for performers over the past many years. Routinely, pro wrestlers have taken to social media in recent years, bemoaning fans to wait for them at the airport with stacks of photographs expecting their signature. Many of these quote-unquote fans are less interested in talent or the promotion they work for and more concerned with creating new inventory for their eBay stores. You know what? I hope more promotions, not just Asian promotions, not just Japanese promotions, but promotions around the world follow this suit and ban this behavior from fans. Again, I've talked about this before. There's a difference between being a fan and being obsessed. And when you're hounding these guys for autographs, it screws everything. They don't want to meet these people when they just need time to themselves. I've actually had numerous occasions where I could have gone up to, random people, like random celebrities I've met over the years. I could tell you stories. I was at a mall having lunch one time, and Tyson Chandler of the Bulls walked in. I didn't approach him for an autograph because I knew he didn't want to be bothered. So I hope that these fans stop hounding wrestlers for autographs, and I hope more promotions start banning fans. And again, I agree with the whole idea of banning fans who are just trying to get eBay fodder for their stores. I get it. It's a good move for New Japan. Again, there's a major difference between fandom and obsession, and these obsessive fans cross the line. And I guarantee you, like everything else, these are the kind of fans that'll fuck things up for the rest of us. So, sticking with House of Wrestling. This concerns a wrestler known as Stepstool Sarah. I'm going to read the text of this article, link in the description. Sarah Rose, who is non-binary and prefers they-them pronouns, is better known to pro wrestling fans as Stepstool Sarah. Now I'm just going to just say this. Which sounds better? Stepstool Sarah or Sarah Rose? Just saying. Anyway, going back to the article, they have been a fixture on the independent scene for several years now as a ring announcer and a photographer, but unfortunately, 3 weeks ago at the time of production, St. Louis Anarchy, or SLA, was alerted by one of its wrestlers that, in his opinion, Rose had been grooming his younger brother, who is currently a senior in high school. Rose is in their early 30s. I spoke with the SLA wrestler in question, who wishes to remain anonymous, about what transpired between Rose and his brother, who also wishes to remain anonymous. The wrestler described a series of interactions at SLA events and elsewhere that made his brother feel uncomfortable. This includes an instance where the brother was adjusting his shorts and Rose asked him what he was adjusting, which they brushed off as a joke. There were also instances where Rose would be mean towards his brother publicly, but privately be very nice to him in what was perceived to be manipulative behavior. The wrestler in question then approached SLA owner Matt Jackson, not of the Young Bucks, with screenshots of the text conversations he took issue with. The wrestler then asked Jackson to take action against Rose, who was a regular SLA photographer. Jackson was then offered a chance to speak with the wrestler's brother directly, and the call was described as, quote, pretty terrifying, end quote, considering how young the victim sounded at the phone. I spoke with Jackson last night, and he confirmed that following a review of the text exchanges and conversations with the wrestler's younger brother, he decided to part ways with Rose for violating the company's code of conduct. It was also noted that Rose had previously worked for SLA as a ring announcer, but they parted ways for a time due to old social media messages servicing where they used the N-word while talking about rap music. I have confirmed that this was the case for a few promotions that worked with Rose as well. After they spent some time away, some chalked up the messages to poor decision-making when they were younger and allowed them back at events. SLA only brought them back in a photography capacity and did not use them as a ring announcer following their return. I've been able to confirm that on top of St. Louis Anarchy, 01, NAP, and Black Label Pro have all cut ties with Rose. I reached out to Rose for comment on the story, and they responded with the following: I'm going to seek help, and I wish to be left alone at this time, please. Where do I start? Where do I fucking start? You were fired from numerous promotions because you used the N-word on social media when talking about rap music, and you are white. That right there should have spelled the end for you. Don't sit here and tell me that it's poor decision making. Oh, I was young and dumb. Yeah, young and dumb stops at about 21, maybe 22. After that, you don't get to be young and dumb. Okay, so there's already right there's a series of issues. Number 2, I have no sympathy for her whatsoever. The sexual nature of abuse towards an underage individual is unforgivable. This was not, if it was just the adjusting the shorts thing and it was just meant to be a joke and that was just it, that would be one thing. You'd say, yeah, I could give you making a stupid comment at the time, and then, but there is an established history here. When you have text messages and communications and you have witness statements, I'm sorry, but you don't get another shot. They also blame their autism for their actions. You know what? Being on the spectrum myself, I have never blamed autism for anything I've ever done. I've never done it. And I can tell you right now, I know a lot of people who have autism. I listen to them. I follow a lot of YouTube channels where people have some. The blaming autism for doing something stupid is incredibly disrespectful and hurtful. And you're clearly just using it as an excuse to get out of trouble. I sincerely hope that this is the last we'll ever see of her. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I hope that this is the last time we deal with Stepstool Sarah, and I hope she ends up selling step stools at Home Depot instead of wrestling. I will take my second break and I'll discuss some superhero movies on the final break. So I'd like to discuss something that happened recently that just proves how bad we are at coming up with new entertainment. Because recently it was announced that the Fantastic Four is getting another live-action reboot. For those of you not paying attention, this is the third iteration of the Fantastic Four since 2005, and that doesn't include the unreleased 1994 edition. Now, while the 2005 Fantastic Four did pretty well at the box office, the sequel didn't do as well, and the less said about the 2015 version, the better. So here's my question. Why does anyone think this will be the saving grace of the series? I mean, we've passed peak superhero movies, that's pretty obvious. I mean, with the end of the Avengers series, as well as the clusterfuck that was the DC Extended Universe, we've flooded the market. We've oversaturated the dirt. They just don't have the appeal that they did a few years ago. And I'd also like to state that it's clear Hollywood is running out of ideas. Here's a question for you. Why don't we go another route that Marvel has been doing sometimes to decent effect? Why not use a new superhero team? It's not that I have anything against the Fantastic Four, but instead of rebooting a franchise for the third time, why not take something that hasn't been tried yet? Try something more obscure. You know, why not Agents of Atlas, Bastards of Evil, Humanity's Last Stand, or Mercs for Money? Not only do these groups have potential, but their names are marketable. Or you could try something else you've not tried before in any capacity, like the 2099 series or Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, which is a Marvel. It's a Marvel wrestling thing. When you reboot the same series 3 separate times, it's not going to bring the results you want. I mean, I like Arthur Fleck. I like the Arthur Fleck version of the Joker, and I'm interested to see this musical sequel. But my point is, taking a superhero movie in a bit of a direction can work. Now, I don't watch many newer superhero movies, but I've watched a few serials from the 1940s. I don't mean breakfast serials, but movie serials, which were a sequence of episodes of a superhero franchise that were like 30 minutes each. They were meant to get kids into theaters every week. If you watch the 1960s Batman TV show, they would end on a cliffhanger and say, well, stay tuned for the conclusion, same bat time, same bat channel. That was a holdover from serials because they were meant to get kids into movie theaters. Now, the two that I've been watching, one was the 1949 Adventures of Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, which is also referred to as Batman and Robin. It's a very cheaply made serial where the dynamic duo face off against Batman's most well-known and well-respected villain, the Wizard. Now, let me just say this. You're not watching it because it's good. You're not. It is not well made by any stretch of the imagination. However, if you want something that's campy and entertaining and you can goof on and you can make fun of, watch all 15 episodes because it's worth it. I'm going to quote the production section on the Wikipedia page, link in the description, because this sums up the production perfectly. Quote, historians Jim Harmon and Donald Glut note, quote, as usual on a Catsman production, the low budget showed everywhere and money-saving shortcuts and inadequacies. The Batman costume had a poorly fitting cowl, and the Robin costume had pink tights to cover the hairy legs of both the actor and the stuntman. The Batman is again excluded, but instead of a limousine in the first serial, the duo drive arrive in a 1949 Mercury. And by the way, after having watched all 15 episodes, they didn't get a new Mercury. They had one that had a lot of technical issues. But that's neither here nor there. The article goes on. Several mistakes and failures of logic occur in the serial. One is that the film shows the bat signal working in broad daylight, which is, I don't think that's unique to this serial, but another occurs that despite the hero's utility belts having been replaced by the normal belts with no pockets or pouches for the serial, in order to escape from a vault, Batman pulls the nose and hose out of an oxyacetylene torch from his belt to cut through a steel door. Now, why you would have that in a belt, that just raises more questions that I really don't want the answer to. Parentheses, the tanks for the torch are not shown, end parentheses. To compound this mistake, it is a fully sized oxyacetylene torch that would have been impossible to carry unseen on his person. Harmon and Glut suggest that this was probably scripted to be a miniaturized 3-inch blowtorch as used in the comics, but the filmmakers improvised following directions for a blowtorch. Now, there's plenty of other weird and quirky things about this sketch, about the serial, but you have to watch it. Like, I cannot do it justice here. This is one of those things you just have to see for yourself. Now, the second serial that I think I've watched this entire serial like 5 times. It's The Adventures of Captain Marvel from 1941. Now, younger viewers will not realize that this is the DC version of Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, and not the Marvel version. Like the new Shazam, Billy Batson gets the power of turning Captain Marvel when he says Shazam. Unlike the 2019 movie, however, this version, the 1941 version of Captain Marvel, is exponentially more violent. Captain Marvel loves to kill people. I mean, he really loves to kill people. And in pretty much every situation, killing shouldn't have been the primary option. Now, there are other YouTubers that have gone into detail on this, but there are a lot of needless deaths in 12 episodes. I think Arthur Fleck as the Joker kills like 6 people throughout the course of the movie. That's not even a minimum. That's not even close to being a minimum for the other movies. And some of these deaths are way too over the top. In one episode, you had, in the course of about a few minutes, a guy who was crushed to death by a car engine, and another guy who Captain Marvel threw off the top of a parking garage. Now, granted, these deaths are very creative. And this serial also has the greatest over-the-top henchman death I've ever seen in cinema, including every James Bond movie. Henchman and Captain Marvel are fighting. Henchman shoots at Captain Marvel. The bullets don't do any harm. They start wrestling for the gun, which Captain Marvel grabs and throws away. The gun hits a wall, goes off, shoots the henchman in the back, killing him. I think I watched that like 50 times in rapid succession, and it just kept getting funnier. These serials have a lot of fight scenes, and with Captain Marvel, each one is better and more entertaining than the previous one. Sets don't get damaged so much that they do annihilated. It's very rare, if ever, that a piece of furniture escapes unscathed in these fight scenes. They're all awesome. Now, while the end of Captain Marvel is a bit predictable, it was a lot of fun, and it was kind of sad to see this series end. And I don't think they did anything more with Captain Marvel for quite a few years, which sucks. It was a great series, and it had a much lower budget and is actually better than a lot of the new modern superhero movies are in this day and age. And as I said before, it's not difficult to come up with something new, especially when you have a lot to choose from. There's a lot of untapped potential available in comic books, yet Studios and comic book companies push the same series and characters on audiences, and you're going to start seeing dwindling ticket sales, if not already. Maybe a new original IP could bring back more audiences. Why not try it? Certainly hasn't been done yet recently. Well, with that, episode 109 comes to an end. I will be back next week with another episode. I'm Dave Frost. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you next week.